The storm had rolled over the plains like a herd of buffalo, angry, relentless, and fast. Wind clawed at the sides of the wooden barn, making it groan as if it could barely hold itself together. Inside, lanterns swung wildly from hooks, their flickering light throwing long shadows across the stalls. The rancher, Luke Tanner, shoved his shoulder against the heavy door, trying to keep it from tearing off its hinges. His coat was soaked, his hat gone somewhere out into the night, and the rain stung his face like bits of glass. He'd bought this ranch only 2 months ago, a stretch of rough land no one else wanted, half the fences down, the well nearly dry. It was all he could afford after the bank took the last place. He'd come here to start again, to prove that failure wasn't the end of a man. But tonight, the heavens themselves seemed to be testing that promise. From the back of the barn came a cry, high, strained, and scared. "Mr. Tanner, it's stuck. The gate won't move." Luke spun, boots sliding on the wet straw. A girl stood near one of the far stalls, her hands wrapped around a wooden latch. She was small, barely 19, maybe younger, and her clothes clung to her from the rain. He'd found her 3 days ago, walking the edge of his property barefoot, hungry and lost. Said her name was Clara. He'd given her shelter, food, and a corner of the loft to sleep in. Now she was staring at him, eyes wide with fear. Inside the stall, a mare was thrashing, sides heaving, trying to rise. Straw and mud flew as the animal cried out again, a terrible, desperate sound. "She's in labor," Luke shouted over the roar of the storm. "That foal's coming tonight whether we're ready or not." Clara pressed against the door, trying to pull it open. The hinges screamed. The storm pushed against the barn so hard it felt like the air itself wanted to crush them. Luke ran toward her, water streaming off his hair. "Spread it open, do it with force," he yelled, gripping the other side of the gate. The girl looked up at him, startled by the urgency in his tone. For a second she froze, then nodded. Together, they yanked the heavy gate apart. The wood cracked, splinters flying, but it gave way just enough for Luke to duck into the stall. The mare was on her side, nostrils flaring, eyes rolling. Luke dropped to his knees in the straw. "Easy, girl, easy now," he murmured. He'd birthed plenty of calves in his time, but horses were different, delicate, quick to panic. "Clara, bring me the clean cloths from the shelf, quick." She scrambled through the mess, hands shaking, and returned with the rags and a pail of warm water they'd used for chores earlier. Luke's hands were steady, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. He worked by instinct, by feel, by the stubborn will that had kept him alive through every hard year on the frontier. Minutes stretched like hours. Rain hammered on the roof, thunder rolled, and lightning flashed white through the cracks in the walls. Clara knelt beside him, holding the lantern close, her face pale but determined. "You're doing good," Luke said, glancing at her. "Don't flinch now, no matter what happens." She nodded, biting her lip. The mare screamed once more, and then, silence. For a heartbeat, Luke thought they'd lost her. Then a tiny sound cut through the storm, a weak, wet cry. He looked down. A foal, slick and trembling, lay half buried in straw. Its chest moved once, twice, and then it lifted its head. Clara gasped. "It's alive." Luke's breath came out shaky. He wiped his arm across his forehead, leaving a streak of mud. "Barely, but yeah, it's alive." He leaned down, rubbing the newborn with the cloth to get its blood moving. The mare turned her head, nuzzling the small body, her breathing slowing. For a long moment, the two humans just sat there, surrounded by the sound of the storm easing outside. Rain still fell, but softer now. The thunder drifted east, grumbling as it went. When Luke finally stood, his back ached and his arms felt like lead. "We did it," he muttered, voice low. Clara looked up at him, the lantern light catching the wet strands of her hair. "You saved her. Both of them." He gave a small, tired smile. "Couldn't have done it without you." Her eyes softened, but she said nothing. Instead, she turned to the foal, brushing its damp coat with her sleeve. It let out a soft sound, like a sigh, and rested its head against the mare's side. Luke stepped outside the stall to lean against a post. The wind had finally died. Beyond the barn door, the plains shimmered silver under the moonlight breaking through the clouds. For the first time in weeks, he felt something stir in his chest, a quiet, steady peace. He glanced back at Clara, still kneeling in the straw. She looked fragile in the light, but there was strength there too, something he hadn't seen when she first arrived. She'd fought through fear, through exhaustion, without thinking twice. You've got grit, he said quietly. She looked up, smiling faintly. You told me to do it with force. He chuckled, shaking his head. Guess I did. They stayed like that for a while, just two lost souls in a storm-torn barn, the air still heavy with rain but filled now with the scent of life and hay and something close to hope. The night had broken them both open, forced them to act, to fight, to save what could still be saved. And though neither said it aloud, they both knew this storm had changed something. It wasn't just the birth of a foal. It was the start of something else, something small and new, fragile as the life they'd just helped into the world. When Luke finally turned down the lantern, he paused at the stall one last time. The mare was asleep, the foal tucked against her side. Clara had leaned back against the wall, her eyes drifting closed, exhaustion softening her features. The morning came clear and cool, the sky washed clean after the long night of thunder and fear. The smell of wet earth filled the air as Luke Tanner stepped out of the barn, his boots sinking slightly into the soft ground. The sun hadn't yet climbed over the far hills, but its pale light was already spreading across the prairie, tinting the dewdrops on the grass like tiny shards of glass. The ranch was quiet now, still, save for the faint rustle of the horses in the corral and the low, steady breath of peace that follows a storm. Inside the barn, it was warmer than it had been in weeks. The mare slept deeply, the newborn foal curled against her side, both safe, both alive. And near them, on a pile of hay, Clara was still asleep too. Her hair fell over her face, her dress torn at the hem, one hand resting protectively near the foal stall as if even in sleep she wanted to keep watch. Luke stood in the doorway, watching her for a long time. There was something unfamiliar in the sight, comforting, maybe even gentle. For years, this ranch had been nothing but work, loneliness, and the slow ache of trying to rebuild a life after losing everything. But now, with her there, it felt different. Alive again. He stepped quietly toward her, careful not to startle her or the animals. "Mornin'," he said softly. Clara stirred, her eyes fluttering open. For a moment, she looked confused, like she'd forgotten where she was. Then she saw him and sat up quickly, brushing straw from her hair. "Oh, Mr. Tanner. I must have fallen asleep. I'm sorry." Luke raised a hand. "Ain't nothin' to be sorry for. You earned the rest. We both did." She smiled shyly, glancing toward the foal. "How's she doin'? Still breathin'? That's good enough for me." They stood side by side at the stall, the smell of hay and new life filling the air. The foal shifted, pressing closer to its mother, its small muzzle twitching as it dreamed. Clara watched it with quiet awe. "I didn't think we'd make it," she whispered. "When the gate wouldn't move, I thought she'd die. I thought." Her voice trailed off, and Luke looked down at her, the weight of her words hanging between them. He knew what it was like to think something was beyond saving, to feel helpless in the face of it. "Sometimes all you can do is keep pushin'," he said gently. "And hope the storm don't take everything from you." She looked up at him, and for the first time, her eyes met his without flinching. "You didn't give up," she said. "Not on the mare, not on the foal. Not on me." Luke's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to hearing that kind of thing. Didn't seem right to. He paused, pulling his gloves from his belt and turning them in his hands. "You said you had no place to go when I found you. That's still true." Clara hesitated, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her sleeve. I don't have anyone left," she admitted. "My folks died last winter. The man I was supposed to marry left before the thaw. Said he couldn't feed another mouth. I tried to get work in town, but nobody wants a girl who can't even read her name proper." Luke nodded slowly. "World can be cruel that way." She nodded too, eyes cast down. "I can work, though. I can clean, cook, mend clothes, all work for food, if you'll let me." He studied her for a long moment, then glanced toward the light spilling through the open barn doors. "Don't want no charity, do you?" "No, sir," she said quickly. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Didn't figure you did." He turned to face her fully then, his shadow falling long across the hay-strewn floor. "You helped me save a life last night. This ranch needs more of that kind of heart. You can stay, if you want." Her eyes widened. "You mean it?" "I ain't in the habit of sayin' what I don't mean." The look that passed over her face was one he hadn't seen in years, pure relief, maybe even gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Tanner," she said softly. "I'll do right by you, I promise." He nodded, pulling his hat back down over his brow. "It's Luke," he said. "Ain't no need for Mr. On my land. The morning light caught her smile then, small and real. Thank you, Luke. They spent the next hours working side by side. Clara fetched clean water from the well while Luke mended the broken boards near the stall. They didn't speak much, but they didn't need to. The quiet between them wasn't heavy, it was easy, filled with the rhythm of a shared purpose. By midday, the sky had turned a bright, endless blue, and the land seemed to stretch forever. When the work was done, they sat on the porch steps, each with a tin cup of coffee. The land lay still before them, the grass glinting in the sunlight, the smell of rain still clinging to the air. You think she'll make it? Clara asked after a while, meaning the foal. Luke took a slow sip before answering. I think she's got a fighting chance. Clara looked down at her hands, quiet for a moment. Guess maybe I do too. Luke glanced at her, surprised by the honesty in her words. She was young, but she carried something older in her, something scarred and strong all at once. You do, he said simply. A long silence followed, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Just stillness, shared and soft. Later that evening, when the sun dipped low and turned the land to gold, Luke walked back to the barn to check on the mare one last time. He found Clara there again, sitting beside the foal, humming softly. The sound was faint, almost shy, but it filled the barn with warmth. Luke stood in the doorway for a while, listening. He realized then how quiet the ranch used to be, how empty the nights had felt. But now, with her there, with the foal breathing softly in the straw, the place didn't feel like a burden anymore. It felt alive. When she noticed him, she smiled, a little embarrassed. Sorry. Didn't mean to wake anyone. You didn't, he said. Sounded nice. She looked down, cheeks pink. Guess I was just trying to calm her down. Luke leaned on the post, his voice low. You've done more than that. Clara tilted her head. What do you mean? He looked at her, really looked at her, the girl who'd shown up barefoot, scared, and starving, now sitting in his barn singing to a foal. You brought life back to this place, he said. She didn't know what to say, so she just smiled. And in that quiet, with the storm far behind them and the sun slipping below the hills, something changed between them, something soft, unspoken, but real.